Wonderful, wonderful. Man,
Thank you,
went
Steve.
through all kinds of tunes there. How many you went through? Three that I counted.
Songs, yeah,
yeah.
songs.
So, and
Yeah.
what were the names of those?
So that was Freight Train, and then we went into Doc's Guitar, and then Cannonball Rag.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so
Wow.
just some fun picking songs.
Is that an arrangement that you came up with?
For the most part. I mean, I kind of took from different players and stuff like that, and of course Tommy Emmanuel, Merle Travis for like Cannonball Rag and stuff like that, and just kind of mashed those songs together because they fit well. You know.
Oh gosh,
So,
it was just
yeah.
great. And then throwing the capo off in the middle of it.
That's fun. That's fun. It works out. You know what I mean?
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
How did you get started playing guitar, and how did you get started
Yeah.
doing fingerstyle stuff?
Yeah, so I started playing guitar probably at the age of, I want to say I was around 13, but I didn't take it seriously till 16. You know, I had a guitar, but I just didn't do too much with it. And I came across a guitar player by the name of Jack Pearson. And we know Jack, right?
Yeah.
Jack's been on the show a few times. And I saw some of those videos, you know, of you and Jack. And I remember, matter of fact, it was in actually, no. There's a video of you doing a lesson with Jack before Groons.
Yeah, before Groons. He was at our old studio.
Before Groons, and there was a video, and I remember just going through that video, and I think he had his black Stratocaster or something in that video, and just picking apart everything he did. You know, not even just the solo, not even just the songs, but like just the stuff he was improvising while he's talking, and he's like, you know, he's explaining that all of these chords are G minor to him, and I'm like, how was that G minor? That you played 1,000 chords, you know what I mean? But I would sit there and I'd break it down, and eventually I'd be like, okay, so this is a G minor 11, you know, this sort of thing, and just kind of like put the pieces together with how Jack thought, you know, because he totally thinks different than most musicians, and he thinks chords. He doesn't think scales for the most part, you know, and it's just fascinating too. The chords that he comes up with is incredible. But anyway, so I found him. Eventually, I saw a video of him playing with Tommy Emmanuel, and I want to say that video was the one of him with Jack at the Station Inn, I want to say, which is a pretty popular
classic.
It's a great video. I think they played what's it called? Autumn Leaves, I want to say. Something like that. But it's such a great video, and I heard both of them play. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So I looked up Tommy and saw what he did, and you know, that was just the tip of the iceberg of what he did. You know, not just his ability to improvise, but his ability to play arrangements on a guitar. It was just wild. You were
back in California.
I was in California at the time. And I want to say, man, what was the first year that I came out to Nashville? I came out to Nashville. I got a lesson with Steve Krenz and Jack Pearson. And just did all the normal Nashville stuff, and it was really, really fun. And so after that, I made it, you know, my goal to get back out and, you know, for the gatherings, and did that. That's about.
And then when did you move out here?
You know, that's actually a really good question. I've been here.
You've been here
7 years now. Yeah, just about 7 years. So
good.
Time flies. Yeah.
And in that time, you have continued to kind of hone your playing, and your craft is just amazing now.
Thank you.
And you're doing all sorts of things on Spotify. And
I'm definitely doing a lot of work on Spotify. That's primarily what I focus on, is like some, you know, is online content, but also just releasing a lot of tracks on Spotify. And I came across a guitar player by the name of Lance Allen, and he, a while back, he basically just, you know, he showed me what he was doing with Spotify, and it was remarkable. I'm like, that's really cool. I would love to do that, because touring wasn't something that I wanted to do full time, you know, and I wanted to start building. And honestly, I'm very glad I built up an online thing, because COVID hit, you know, shortly after I started doing that, you know. So so I started working on Spotify and kind of did the things that Lance did, you know, and worked on getting onto playlists and things like that. And of course, Spotify's, you know, changed the music scene a lot, as streaming in general has, I guess. So it's a different, you know, thought process than selling CDs or something like that, you know, and selling albums and things. So typically you release singles, and artists start getting back into albums now, which is kind of cool. So anyway, I started doing that.
And now, when did you? Because I know now you've got like 100,000 monthly subscribers.
It kind of fluctuates, but somewhere in the 130,000 monthly listeners right now.
Amazing.
But it's been good. I want to say I've been doing it for 6-ish years, because that pretty much started when I moved out here. Because I was, you know, at that point, I'm like, how am I going to make a living with guitar? So that's kind of when I started looking into things. So, since then you know, obviously I release music through my Collin Hill profile, but I've also got like 3 other profiles that most people don't know about that I also release music through. And one of them is called Nylon and Cedar. And that's just one for nylon string guitar, like classical music, because classical music and that nylon sound typically does better on certain Spotify playlists than other playlists. You know, Peaceful Guitar is a big Spotify playlist that I don't even have a placement on yet. But that playlist, along with a ton of others in that genre, don't have steel string music on. Maybe like 1 or 2 songs. Matter of fact, I think Lance got a song on there that was a steel string song. But yeah, so I've been doing that, and that was just more out of like, you know what, I'm going to get a lot of streams doing this, so why don't I go ahead and get myself a nylon string guitar? And I called up Orangewood Guitars and worked out a thing with them, and they sent me their nylon string guitar. I upgraded. Thanks to the NAMM show, I got a connection and upgraded to a Cordoba, which is nice.
Which I saw one of your videos on that. It just sounded amazing.
Oh,
beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. I've been posting just a few snippets with that guitar on Instagram. Yeah.
And what guitar are you playing on today?
Yeah, this one's my Maton, and this one's the guitar that I've had forever. I say forever, but I got this on one of the guitar gathering trips. I went down to Artisan Guitars, and I got Tommy to sign it back there. So that's
wonderful.
That's really exciting. But it's seen some things, and it's the top used to be normal spruce colored. You know, now it's almost the side or the color of the sides. You know. And
I noticed the wear on the neck there is getting consistent. You've seen some use.
It's working its way up, which is good.
Good.
That's funny. But no, yeah, it's great. I've had it refretted once, which is it was a really good choice, I think, a good decision, because like it was starting to have some issues with really, like 3 or 4 fret dresses in. Yeah. And it's getting kind of low. And I went to Joe Glacier, and I basically just asked, can you put what Joe and Tommy use? And because they apparently they used the same frets, at least at the time they did. And it's like a wider fret, but also a taller fret. So it's kind of it's just big all around. And it's great. I feel like it has a lot of sustain and like note clarity. Yeah. And I just like that about it. And so it kind of brought the instrument back to life.
Now I notice you're playing with a thumb pick as well. Do you always play with a thumb pick, or do you sometimes go without?
Yeah, sometimes I go without. It just depends on the song. Like if there's like a ballad or something like that, and I need more of a softer sound, I'll use my thumbnail, and I do have a bit of nail. I have nails on, all my fingers are nails. But
fake? Are those real?
These are real.
Okay.
Yeah, and I could get fake. It'd probably give me a more consistent sound, but I've kind of got my own system worked out. With like lotion, making sure they're not brittle, making sure they're filed down. I use sandpaper, 400 grit, nothing too special. I find that actually when I go finer with the sandpaper, it gets too smooth of a sound for my nail, and I'm not sure, that's weird. Usually you want it as smooth as you can get it, but it takes a little bit of zing out of the notes or something like that. So so
fantastic. Now do you know what kind of pickup you have in that thing?
Yeah, this one's a Maton AP5 Pro. So it's just the regular pickup that comes with pickup. Yeah, and it's wonderful. It's great for live. It's definitely what I use for live. It's my primary instrument. It just gets such a good sound. It's really hard to plug it in and get a bad sound, which is phenomenal.
Now, I know what you're hearing out there is a combination of our mic as well as some processing that's going on your computer, on your laptop of all things. So he's not running on any pedals. It's strictly just a laptop. So what are you running over there?
Yeah, so I'm just going into my interface, which just gets it into my laptop. It's not doing any processing there. And then once I get in, I've got a little bit of EQ that I'm running on the top end to tame the top end. I am doing a little bit of reverb, so you could probably hear the tail on that right there. So that's 1.3 seconds. If I turn this up, I can get a much longer decay. Can you hear that? And it's a nice sound.
Beautiful.
But yeah, there's a lot of flexibility when you run it through a laptop, because I can do that. I think I'm running into some compression as well, and some stereo imaging just to make it a little bit wider sounding. So. And
then that's going into what is the
So I've got a Motu M4 interface, and I got it for live performance because it's got very low latency. So no bells and whistles to it really. good preamps, not incredible preamps, but good preamps, and they're very quick.
So that's not really doing anything
It's
other
really
than
not.
splitting the signal.
Just splitting the signal. Everything's in the laptop right now. Yeah, and I prefer, like, it would be nice to have a multi setup. You know what I mean? Like live, it's nice to have pedals happening. Usually I go through like a big Sky reverb. Although I am really liking reverbs in laptops and in DAWs, because there's a lot of effects that you can get, a lot more flexibility you can get.
Let's talk about your technique and some of the things as you've been started to kind of hone in on where you were going with fingerstyle. Kind of talk us through that journey and some of the technique things you had to go through.
Yeah, I think I went through some of the normal processes, and I learned a lot from you as well. You know, in the whole beginnings of like hand placement, also just like understanding that your thumb, index, middle, ring, and that kind of thing. And that's the way I teach students now as well, where it's just like I typically tell them, start with your thumb covering the E string, A string, D string, and your index covering the G, right? Your middle finger covering the B, and then ring finger covering the high E. That's typically just a good place to start, you know? And if you can get that hand position down, then you can theoretically pluck through chords, right? You can grab any chord and, say you have a C chord down, you can put your thumb on the A string bass, you know what I mean? Pluck that, and then you've got a few other strings to pluck. You hit the D string as well. It's really important to know like the chord structure, you know what I mean? So you know what notes you're choosing to pluck inside the chord, at a given time. But that's like the primary hand position. Also, I learned from a long time ago to plant my pinky down, and not everybody does that, but Tommy did that, and I was like, you know what, let me do that because that's the style I'm going for, and it has been really helpful. Yeah, I don't think I could live without it.
So you're always having
I'm always
planted.
down. Yeah, sometimes just because my hand is small and it's not as big as Tommy's, like if I need to be up here, you know what I mean, for tone purposes or just anything like that, it will come off, but it's still ready to go. It doesn't curl up, it's still out there ready to go. Sometimes it's touching the top string, sometimes it's sitting over here on this, but as long as it's kind of touching something, it has a point of contact, it kind of knows where it's at, You've also got, your palm here, which should be kind of floating to the point that you can feel bridge pins sometimes, you can palm mute if you want to. So there's always a few points of contact there,
What are some exercises or warm-ups that you have found helpful with fingerstyle playing?
Fingerstyle playing, man, that's good. That's a good question. It kind of depends on what you're going for, but patterns can be good. Right hand patterns if you're trying to develop speed, right? You can pick a pattern and then just walk through some chords and play that pattern. I think like if you're just barely starting off.
Play us that pattern.
Okay,
teach that to us.
Yeah, so this pattern is a bit like folky, I want to say, because you're alternating the bass line, but it's not thumb picking because it's not thumb picking, muting the bass. But, what I'm doing here is I'm starting with, and now I'm breaking the rules already. My middle finger is up here on the top E string. Just got a G chord here. Okay.
You're playing the outside strings.
Playing the outside strings with a pinch, right? Pinch. Then my thumb hits the G. My index hits the B. Then my middle finger hits the high E. So far we've got pinch, thumb, 1. Oh, sorry, I don't hit the high E. I go pinch, thumb 1, then my thumb comes down and it hits the low E string one more time. So let me just back that up one more time. We have pinch, thumb 1, thumb, okay? Then we have middle finger hits the E string, thumb hits the G, index hits the B, and then we start over.
Okay.
So it's like pinch, thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 1, pinch, thumb 1. And you can alternate between different strings, right? I'm going from the G to G just because that sounds good on a G chord, right? If you're on a D, if you're on a D chord there, it would just be D to G, D to G with your thumb. And you can work that up, speed that up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the more patterns that you know and songs that you learn, I always say like learn as many songs as you possibly can, because when you do, you're going to be forced to learn things you didn't know how to do. Your hands don't have that programming yet. You know what I mean? The more songs you learn, there's going to be more and more overlap, especially if you learn from the same artist, right? Because they're going to do similar things. But the more songs you learn, the more muscle memory, your hands become used to things, and you'll be able to just hear something, maybe play it the first time because you've played something similar, you know what I mean? Because there's the guitar ecosystem is only so big, and there's so much overlap between songs. So the more songs you learn, the more your hands are just going to be aware how to do things, if that makes sense.
Lee is asking, can you play something on an nylon string guitar? Probably so, but we don't have one around.
Sadly, I didn't bring it. That's so funny. I probably should have brought it. But no, I've been making a lot of songs with that, you know.
Yeah.
That's been my normal thing right now, like once a month releases on
Yeah.
nylon and cedar.
Yeah.
But I will say though, those songs are multi-tracked. So there's always multiple me's on top of each other, you know, playing like where I'll lay down a part, lay down melodies, lay down harmonies, and sometimes there's like 5 parts at once and that kind of thing. So it'd be hard to do that live.
Willard is asking, what's the app that you're running on the laptop?
I am going through Logic.
Logic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
even like the reverb and stuff like that.
The reverb is Valhalla Vintage Verb.
What's it called?
Valhalla Vintage Verb. Yeah, and it's great. I want to say it's $50 or $100 somewhere in there. It's really good. It's really worth it. There's a lot of things you can do with it, and I put it on everything that I mix and stuff like that usually. Yeah.
Beautiful. Don is saying, how do you keep your nails from getting brittle?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that has helped me, I've never had a huge problem with nails cracking, and I know everybody's different. So if you know, I can't speak to people that have super thin nails or something like that. I feel like mine are fairly rigid to begin with, but I do put hand lotion on them. Typically, I use like an in-shower lotion as well. You know what I mean? So they don't dry out when you get out of the shower. That's really that's all I do. You know, and so I used to take vitamins for it, but I didn't really need to, I don't think, you know, and I haven't recently. So, but it just depends, because I mean, most of my friends that have that play with nails play with fake nails, you know, and get them put on just because of consistency, but also just natural nails, you know.
And you also have your teaching. You're doing a whole bunch more online teaching these days. Talk us about through those courses that you've been releasing.
For sure, yeah. So I've been doing some online classes with a company called Till. And those are like weekly classes, and Till is like a TIL, literally, and the website's learnontill.com. And it's a pretty new company, and they started up not too long ago, a few years ago, with like an app version, basically, where people download the app, and it was almost like a bit of an Instagram or a TikTok for learning guitar. You would go on there, and there would be different guitarists, you know, teaching at random times during the day, and you could go on there and just, you know, log in and basically learn from them. So that was going on for a while. Of course, they paid the artists, but it was free for the people, and that was kind of like their startup phase to build an audience and all that sort of stuff. So recently, like this last month, they've switched to a different platform, so like desktop. So it's on the computer now. It's not on the app. There's much more like interaction. You know, people can, you know, there's like a bit of a community under each lesson, sort of like curriculum. So people can chat in there. They can share videos of what they're learning. You know, I'll post challenges and stuff like that. Say like, okay, we learned this, so go ahead and play this, perform it, and post it, you know, and we can all just kind of share feedback and stuff like that. So it's really cool. I was doing that on the app, and then of course they stopped doing that, and they've moved over to the web version, which hasn't started yet, but it's in the sign up process now. So I've got 2 classes there. One of them is learning the entire fretboard, and it is a no shortcut approach. It's 25 weeks, and it could be longer. And it's going through everything. It's going through the major scales all over the neck. It's going through key signatures. It's going through the cage system. It's going through intervals in the cage system. It's going through the harmonized major scale, and then attempting to put it all together.
Good.
So it is no shortcuts. I mean, like, that's the way I'm advertising. I'm like, if you guys want to know the neck and literally never be lost again, like, I guarantee it. I've taken enough students through it to know that honestly, like, the fog tends to come off. You know, they're like, man, and it's typically around the time where they've learned the cage system, and we're talking about intervals. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you're in the G shape here, C. Where are the 3s at? You know what I mean? And then they can find the 3s there, and then they can find the 3s in different parts of the neck and that kind of thing. That's how you can translate licks around the neck and chord progressions and things like that. So it's been good. It's been good. So anyway, that one's starting. I've also got one that I was doing on the app version where we learn a song every week. And it's typically a short, you know, song, because it's 60 minutes. You know what I mean? It's lots of just like pushing through muscle memory. You know what I mean? Just try to get it in you as fast as you can. But it's recorded. So you can always go back and figure it out if you kind of get stuck, you know, falling behind a little bit. But we'll just go over simple things, you know, and some of them have been harder than others, you know, just kind of based on the students that are there and seeing what they want to do. But that was great. I think we went through over 10 songs, you know, in the
Wow.
last like 10 weeks and stuff. But like I said, we switched to the web platform. It's going to be a little bit easier. It's paid now, so you know people have to pay now. That's the only difference. But it should be good. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
The links for those things are down in the YouTube description down below. So if you're interested in checking out some of Collin's amazing materials, check out those links down in the YouTube description.
Yeah.
What are you going to play for us?
I think I'm going to play an original called Seasons. This is off my String Stories album. And yeah.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Does that sound good?
Just beautiful.
Thank
Lovely.
you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So many just wonderful colors in that. I just
Appreciate it. Thank you.
love it. Your playing is just so expressive. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And you're playing a Kepma guitar, which
Kepma
you've had a
guitar.
relationship with.
Yeah. Mhm.
With these instruments and this guitar maker. Kind of talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so they've been around for quite a while actually, and it's a Chinese guitar brand actually, but it's not like an export brand. You know, it's a brand that they actually make for their people over there. You know, their population. They sell upwards of 20,000, 30,000 guitars a month over there. So they're big. They're the Martin or the Taylor, the Gibson, you know, of China, and but they started, you know, a few years back recently getting outside China, you know, to Europe and the States. And
because I think they have an office here in Nashville.
Yeah. And so, so they've started branching out and, you know, getting into different stores and stuff like that and doing pretty well. And they're still not very well known, you know, but they're great guitars, and they're really well built, and they come plec dressed as well. They got a few plec machines over there in the factory that Joe Glacier installed. So you know, they've got the right equipment, and they definitely care a lot about their instruments, which is pretty cool. This one happens to be a prototype that they haven't released, or maybe won't. I'm not exactly sure yet.
Yeah.
But they got a few different things going on. Yeah.
Well, I know you've been at our fall fingerstyle retreat so many times, and it's just we're blessed and honored to have you anytime you're able to do it. But I know last time you couldn't because you were over in China.
I was over in China,
with Casper Espin and a lot of these great guys working, doing concerts and having a fun time over there.
Yeah, it was really good. It was amazing. I mean, we went there technically for Music China, but they also put on a show, like some concerts for us afterwards. So it was a little miniature tour after Music China. Music China is like the NAMM show of China, and so there was, you know, everything was there. You know, anything that we would know, like from Diodario to different Chinese brands and things that we don't necessarily know about. But it was great. Everybody was super kind. The food was wild. I ate some stuff. Over there. Some really, really good stuff and some wacky stuff. So goose intestines and all sorts of different things. So some crazy things. I've got stories.
Better you than me.
It was great, but it was a lot of fun. The shows were great. It's amazing how they really love music out there, you know, and it doesn't have to be in their language or even have lyrics, you know, and they'll still sing along, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Just with melodies and stuff like that. So.
What was one of the first things, like, show us a good lick on fingerstyle guitar or something, you know, that you learned that you could share with everybody? Yeah,
well, let me think about this. We could do...
You were in drop D right there,
I was in drop D, yep. I feel like I'm constant. Close. We could do like a Chet Atkins lick, which is a very fun. Right. This is a great way to end like a fingerstyle song in the key of C, right? So you're in the key of C, and you can do a nice little pull off lick.
All right, so what is that?
It's easier than it sounds, which is nice. So we're in the key of C, and we have this basically. It's almost like a chromatic lick. There's a few chromatic notes in here. You start with a C chord, and then you're gonna go. We're going to do a pull-off, double pull-off, basically start at the 3rd fret on the B string, pluck that, pull off a half step, pull off to the C, and then go down a string and do the exact same thing, but to the open string, so keep that index down, so it's like, and then the D string, and then end on the C. I typically grab a C with a G in the bass, and then just end like that so it gets that rich sound. You know, you can use it in the middle of it, and just kind of keep going. You could use it as a lick and that kind of thing. But that's great, ending in the key of C. So that's fun.
Wonderful.
I could give him another.
Come on.
Let's just go through.
One.
Let's see. This one's fun. Okay, so if you're in the key of G. Or key of E minor, you can.
Wow. Okay. So show us what's happening there.
Yeah. So it's awesome. Little pulses. It's actually kind of pentatonic, which is fun, but it's just in a creative way. I feel like this is a Mateus lick, Mateus Asado. If you've heard of him, he's great. He kind of ripped through this in a song of his. So it starts with like this 3rd fret to 5th fret hammer on the B string, and then you're gonna pluck the open B. Okay, so I'm holding onto my thumb pick, so just pretend you have a pick here. Okay, you pluck the open E after you do that hammer on. So 3rd, 5th, open E. Then you pluck that B string again, pull it off to the 3rd, pull it off to the open, right? So far we got, right? And you could get that fast pretty quick. Okay, and then right there, you're gonna go 3rd fret G string, pluck that, slide to the 2nd fret, pull off to the open G. So far. Okay, and then go down to the D string. What I did there was hammer on, well, pluck the D, hammer on 2nd fret, hit the open G also with your middle finger. So you're kind of doing this hybrid thing, right? So, okay, after you've hit the G string open, try to keep it ringing while you come up here. And right there, you're gonna go, that's D string 5th fret, hammer on to 7th fret D, and then hit the G again. So, okay, then, oh, sorry. Hit the D string, what is that, 4th fret? Hit the A string 5th fret, slide it down to the 2nd fret. So far. Pull off to the open A, and then you can go out any which direction you want. You can end on the G. I typically go down to a D over F sharp, right?
Yep.
And then you could go outside of the key and grab an F if you want. C with the, in the bass, and then end with that. But it's great. It's really fun. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's flowy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It has a bit of flow to it.
I see Gary Nelson is saying, Collin, do you find that you benefit from having a cutaway? I noticed your Maiden didn't have one, but this one does.
Yeah, I do benefit. And actually, that song right there, when I went up here, is a pain to play on the Maiden.
Yeah,
because basically
you just can't get up there.
You can't. What I do is I reach my thumb over the top, and then you get a little bit more give. But you have to finagle with it if you don't have a cutaway. So yeah, I do prefer it. And honestly, I don't think it changes the tone of guitars at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's way too many other factors that actually change it. So
Yeah.
I definitely prefer cutaway.
Yeah, I do too. There's just some things that you need to get up there for.
100%. Yeah.
And when you can't get up there, it's frustrating.
It's
you have
really
to
frustrating.
Figure out other ways to get around it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Sometimes if you're not thinking about it, your hand just hits it.
yeah. So cutaways are advantageous in certain situations.
For sure.
Don is saying, do you have 2 cables out of your guitar?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, okay, you do.
So this guitar, I've got 2 pickups in right at the moment. I want to do more because I want some more sonic possibilities. But I'm running a magnet pickup from Double, which is also a Chinese brand that kind of works with Ketma quite a bit. So Double pickups, and then also an undersaddle. This is a Shatton. It's it's basically like a stick-on under the saddle.
So you don't have a preamp though.
I don't. They both have batteries.
Okay.
They're both they both need batteries. But then going into the interface, just two separate channels, and then they get summed together on my laptop basically. Matter of fact, I'm gonna solo the Shatton pickup, so that's all you hear. It's probably gonna sound really muddy. Because what I did with the Shatton pickup is I don't particularly like the top end of piezos, right? But I do like the top end of a magnet. This is a magnet microphone, I forgot to say. It's a microphone blend, actually.
Oh, so there's actually the magnetic pickup and a mic
and a microphone in there.
Okay.
So it is technically 3 sources, but it's summed right there. I would actually like that to be separate, to be honest. I think I want to get a microphone that's separate so I can mix independently. But anyway, so I've got basically all the top end rolled out of that pickup, right? And I've also got a little bit of stereo spread on that pickup, which just makes the bottom end sound like just kind of big, on the bass. And then this is the magnet microphone, the magnet mic pickup soloed. Lots more air, not as much body, more top mid range. But then you put the 2 of them together, and it's definitely a decent sound, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of experimenting and stuff like that.
What type of strings are you using on that thing?
Yeah, so these are D'Addario XS. They're
Boy, those are just the string that everybody's using.
They're the string
these days.
Yeah.
I know I've had good success with those
For
and have
sure.
officially switched over to those.
They're great. Yeah.
What size are you
12
doing?
to 53.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes to 56, but it just depends.
Yeah,
Some
which
of
I
those
think is their
packs-
light.
Yeah.
The 12 to 52, 53, whatever.
53 is the light, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely a good string. I have found I've had some intonation problems with it before, and it's only been just a few bad packs though, so I don't think it's a consistent thing.
Yeah.
But isn't that weird? I never thought that strings could have intonation issues built in,
Yeah,
but they
every now and
can.
then you get
Yeah.
a dud.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
doesn't function right like
It's
the
really
others.
interesting. Yeah. So.
Keith is asking, who influenced you along your journey into this into the style you have now?
Well, like I said, the first guy would have been Jack Pearson, and he's more of a blues guitar player. But then I found Tommy, so Tommy Manuel is a big influence for sure. And then people behind or before Tommy, like Chet Atkins, has definitely been an influence. And he played the songs like with like Windy and Warm, and he took what Merle Travis did and just kind of broke it down a little bit more and put more detail behind it, because Merle Travis did he did stuff like, hold on, let me take some reverb off this. He did stuff like Cannonball Rag, but he would play it with two fingers. So he'd play thumb and index just kind of through the whole,
Just manhandling it. Yeah.
I'm not doing it as clean as he does it, but it's just hard. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like kind of upward strumming and then just lots of notes going on. Very honky tonk, honestly, on a guitar.
Yeah.
And he came up with chords like that. It's a very honky tonk chord. Yeah, that kind of thing. So it's very, very, I don't know, honky tonk.
Yeah.
But so Chet took that a little bit and like cleaned it up for his style, you know what I mean, and put more individual notes and differentiation and stuff like that. And then Tommy came along and did stuff a lot like Chet, where a lot of his songs sound like Chet. A lot of articulation and just melodies are coming through. The bass line's very specific.
Yeah.
I love it. So Tommy did that, and so he's been a big influence. Other guitar players be like Joe Robinson is an influence for sure.
Yeah.
His speed and his accuracy and his technique is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Really phenomenal. And
Yeah.
So guys like Joe, Emil Ehrenborough from Sweden is a big influence. I love his playing. I love his the way he plays jazz. His Christmas album's got to be the best. It's it's one of the best like solo arrangements and stuff like that. Just his way of playing jazz and his arrangements and his solos that he takes it's really cool. It's really really cool. Who else would have been a big influence on? Man, I mean, they're all of the fingerstyle players. You know what I mean? I would have to say all of the fingerstyle guys. I feel like I've taken ideas from.
Yeah.
And you do that. You know what I mean? You even take ideas from friends and you just put it. I don't know. It's like you take the things you like most.
Yeah.
And then it comes out of your own playing.
It comes out of you.
Yeah.
It becomes a part of what you are doing musically.
Exactly.
It's not stealing. I mean, I guess at the beginning it would be stealing because you don't really have your own voice yet.
Mm-hmm.
But as you kind of develop your voice on the instrument, you're just kind of taking these ideas that person does real well and this person does real well, and you're kind of incorporating them.
Totally.
And then you take that new tool, your new paintbrush, and then you can paint whatever you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That lick right there is a tool. You take half of it right there and then end a song with it. Boom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like you can use that. It becomes you. It might change a little bit as you play it. That's what I find too. Is like the more you play a song, you've learned a song. The more you play it, it will change a little bit over the course of you playing it. You know what I mean? You'll just kind of find the way that you like to play it most.
Yeah.
And it becomes your own.
Tell us about your practice routine and kind of what you do and what you find that's helpful.
Yeah. I would say my practice routine has been all over the place recently.
Oh, yeah?
It's not as structured as it used to be for sure. But if I were to base it off of what I used to do, it would be, when I was really, really working at just going up the mountain as fast as I could, I would play about 4 hours a day, sometimes five hours a day, and just, you know, I would learn songs, but a lot of times I was frustrating because my ear wasn't, you know, ready to do that. But I would always separate it out. I would always learn theory first, typically, because it's the thing I didn't want to do as much. You know, it's just easier to skip that at the end of the day. So I started with theory, and it depended, you know, on the day. It's like, you know, major scales, sometimes learning the neck. Memorizing key signatures, how many flats are in the key of G flat, E flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. So you just rattle it off, you know, and then try and put it on the neck, and then say that. You know, you might do that for you know, the first 30 minutes if you have the time. You know, you might have to shorten that if you don't have the time, but first 30 minutes, and then I would go and let's just say I was in the Jack Pearson phase, and I'd break down one of his videos and be like, why did he use those notes when he soloed? Why did he use that chord? What is that chord? You know what I mean? If I didn't figure it out, it would frustrate me, but I would figure it out a few months from now. You know, when I came across some resource that's like, oh, that was a minor 7 flat 5. It was a 2-5-1. You know,
that's the important part. You know, you can always learn the lick, but you want to go, you know, as you guys are learning, go beyond just learning the lick. There's 1,000 guys and 1,000 places you can learn the lick.
Yeah.
Learn why that lick is working.
100%.
How can I put that lick in other situations?
Yep.
Can I put it in different keys? Can I put it in different string sets?
Yep.
Does it work over the relative major and minor? Can I flip the lick like that?
That's good. Yeah.
It's just learn how to use. You've got this little thing, and a lot of times we'll learn the lick to, oh, I like the intro to this one song. We'll learn the lick to that song, and then you'll never use it again because you only just see it in that one little thing.
And you didn't take it out of the context. You didn't break it down. You didn't do all that sort of stuff.
You got to take it out and figure out why that's working.
100%.
And put it in every situation you can.
Try to learn, like take a lick. Okay, there's a little jazz lick, right? In the key of C. Try to take that, break down what are the intervals in that, okay? And intervals being like 1 through 7, what notes are those, right? Well, this one's a 3, 7, 5, 6. Okay, it's very good to get those also like ingrained to the point that you can hear 1 through 7 in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, you know? Yeah. So 3, I could hear it in my head before I play it, right? But you want to be able to like put it in different spots on the neck, right? Just because if you know the intervals, that has to do with the cage system and stuff like that. You're going to be able to pull that lick out in a different spot, right? You're in the key of C, but you're down here. Yeah. And then keep going or whatever, right? Yeah. So it is about figuring out the pieces, like the theory behind it. But it's also like I feel like theory and ear training go hand in hand, like a lot, because you can learn licks and all that sort of stuff, but if you don't know what, like you were just saying, what it's there for, what function it's, doing that sort of thing, it's not going to be very useful to you. Also, it's going to be very hard to find it if you can't hear it first in your head, right? You want to hear what a 1 sounds like, ba, a little flat there, but, and then like you might hear a lick, ba, 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 da, da, da. You know what I mean? Hear the lick before you can play it. That just has to do with knowing the intervals. It also has to do with learning songs. Back to learning songs, right? If you learn a Tommy Emmanuel song, or let's say that Chet Atkins song, was it Windy and Warm? You can break down that melody and figure out what it is. Okay, it's flat 3 and that sort of thing. And your ear will become acquainted with what a flat 3 sounds like. Your ear will become acquainted with what a flat 5 sounds like, that blues note. You know what I mean? So when you hear that, even if it's a trumpet player or if it's a singer or anything like that, you'll be able to translate that to the instrument a lot faster. Don is asking, do you use alternate tunings, open G, things like that? I don't a lot. I am working on some songs right now with alternate tunings, but typically I'm in standard or drop D, usually. A lot of my friends use alternate tunings, and it's a great sound. It's not great if you want to play with other people typically, you know what I mean? Because, it's hard you typically just learn songs in alternate tunings. It does depend though. There are people that stay in alternate tunings enough that they know how to play with other people and jam and that kind of thing in those tunings, which is really cool. Willard is asking, do you prefer the clamp-on Kaiser type capos or other... That's a great question. Other type styles. I've got both here today. Here's a good Kaiser old Kaiser. Clamp. Kaiser clamp. They're great. You can't go wrong with it. I prefer the G7 capo. And this is the Performance 3, and they're not exactly cheap, but they are worth it. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, they kind of work on a mini ratchet sort of a system, and I like them too because they can apply exactly the right amount of pressure.
Exactly.
Sometimes the clamps can get a little strong. I mean, they work because they'll just hit that string with so much pressure that it eventually makes contact.
Yeah.
With these, you can kind of control by how you squeeze into that how much pressure it is actually applying, and thus not pulling your string out of tune.
Yeah,
as
100%.
much.
Yeah, and it's great for like nylon string guitars as well, because if you need a capo for that, you don't want to be using a clamp for that.
Yeah.
If you use like lighter gauge strings, Kaisers are not the way to go usually, because they're gonna push it right down to the wood, and you're gonna have some problems. If you do have a Kaiser, when you put it on, just stretch your strings out. Try to get as much string on this side of the capo as possible.
All right, hey, what are you gonna play for us?
I think I played it before, but I want to go out with a bang. We'll play Classical Gas.
Oh, hey, come on,
let's
how
do it.
fun! Good.
Alrighty, let's see.
Wonderful. Thank you, Collin.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks
what
so
a
much
joy
for having me.
having you here.